Welcome back. Christian Ziegler is the chair of the Republican Party of Florida, and I always appreciate having him on to share his views. I started by asking him for his reaction to the governor's decision to remove the elected state attorney in Orlando, Monique Worrell.
Yeah, look, this state attorney there, she was backed by George Soros, her campaign, and he went around the country and installed people into these state attorney positions. And then once they get in there, they stop prosecuting criminals and they let them run wild, and it makes the community less safe. And the governor has a duty and a responsibility to keep Floridians safe. And if he has to remove a state attorney for not doing their job, I'm all for that. I go to Orlando often. I want to make sure that I'm safe when I'm in Orlando. I want my family to be safe when we're in Orlando. So I think that action was a good one. It's been celebrated by a lot of people that are from that area. They have a lot of concerns with some of the criminals that have been let go that haven't been prosecuted. And I think it sends a message that if you're not going to do your job, there's going to be some accountability, which you actually never see in government.
Well, you refer to her as a George Soros installed prosecutor. The fact of the matter is she was an elected prosecutor by the people of Orlando and the surrounding area. Why should the people's will in electing her be overridden by the governor?
Well, when you have an activist in there as state attorney that's ignoring, prosecuting certain types of criminals, that's making the community more dangerous, the governor has a duty. And if he didn't remove her, people would be blaming him for not using every tool in his tool belt to keep Floridians safe. So I think the governor is doing that. That's what his focus was, and that's what his focus is. And that's why you saw that action be taken. And he's clearly showed that, and we saw this during COVID. I mean, this is nothing really new, that if a community is going to take away the freedoms of Floridians or put Floridians in harm's way, the governor will step in and take action if he has those actions that are available to his disposal.
Isn't that what elections are for? She's up for re-election next year. If she's doing a bad job, if she's endangering people in the Orlando area, shouldn't that be the province of the people in Orlando to then vote her out of office if she's not doing well?
Well, look, you have elections, but you also have the executive authority. And this is something that's clearly within his authority. And we saw him do it in Hillsborough County. Now we're seeing it in Orange County. So yes, there's elections, but then when you also have additional authority where you can come in and impose that. I think that's all the governor's doing. And I think at the end of the day, the way that people look at this is not a process issue. It's more looking at it and saying, what's going to keep the community safe? We need to prosecute criminals and thugs that are out there breaking the law. And if someone's going to stand in the way and not do their job that they were elected to do, then I think at that point that there's cause for removal. Now, what's interesting is when you listen to the press conference with this failed Soros state attorney. I mean, her number one, the reason why she was upset she was removed is because she wasn't going to get a paycheck anymore. I mean, she said that from the podium. So really for her, it's more about personal benefit than serving the community. It's pretty clear. And I think that's why you saw the governor take that action.
Critics say that he tends to only go after Democrats. As you pointed out, the Hillsborough County prosecutor was a Democrat, Andrew Warren. Now here's another Democrat. The vast majority of people who he removed, and I should point out, for previous governors, they only would remove an elected official if they had been charged with committing a crime. Now the governor is just sort of removing people, particularly Democrats, because he disagrees with them. Is that really the way you want to have a state? Because it could work the other way. When there's a Democrat in the governor's mansion, do you want a Democrat to just start removing Republicans?
Well, look, I saw the list, and actually it's a spread of people that are Democrat, yes, but Republican, independent. So it's a spread of people that have had, accountability come from the governor's office. But I think Floridians are pretty clear with where the direction they want the state to go in. And again, when you have an elected official that is refusing to do their job, that is then putting Floridians at risk, I think the governor has a duty to take action. That's all we saw.
The governor, obviously, as we all know, won a huge victory here in Florida in 2022, 19 points. But he seems to be having trouble communicating that nationwide. And some of his critics will argue that moves such as the one with the Orlando state attorney are designed to sort of help change the narrative from his problems on his campaign. I know that you've remained neutral. You as a head of the Republican Party, you don't have any dog in the hunt in terms of who is the Republican nominee, whether it's Trump, DeSantis, Tim Scott, or whoever else. But I'm wondering why you think DeSantis' campaign is struggling as much as it is.
Well, look, I mean, yes, I mean, as you mentioned, the Republican Party, we're going to stay neutral. I frankly am waiting for a nominee to be sent our way, and then we'll make sure they win the state of Florida in the general election. So that's what I'm focused on. Everyone has their different pieces of the pie. That's my piece that I need to make sure we deliver on. But the second part of this is running a national race is totally different than inside a state, obviously. More geography, other areas that people don't know you. It takes time to build up your name, but then you're also going against an individual with President Trump that he has a long history of support and his base is very strong that's behind him. So I think it's a challenge, but there's time, I guess, to bounce back, but that's going to be on the campaigns. I mean, again, I'll let them speak for themselves on what their strategy is or, why something's working or not working. I'm going to be laser focused on building the Republican Party because if President Trump's the nominee, we need all the DeSantis supporters behind him. If DeSantis was the nominee, we need all the Trump supporters behind him. Otherwise, we can't win the election. So we're going to be out there fighting to make sure we have the organization ready and that we're unified going in the general election. I have a good relationship with both men. I think Governor DeSantis has been an outstanding governor. I think President Trump was an outstanding president. It is, I will say, it's great from Florida's perspective to have two of the leading candidates coming from our state. I think it really highlights just how pro-freedom and conservative and the quality of politics that we have coming out of Florida.
You've segued nicely into one of the reasons why I did want to talk to you. 2 weeks ago, I had the head of the Democratic Party in the state of Florida, Nikki Fried, on. She was talking about her efforts. She's putting $1 million, she said, into a voter registration effort to try to regain some of the lost ground to the Republican Party. I guess I wanted to get, your reaction to what Nikki Fried is trying to do on the Democratic side, and then, but more importantly, what are Republicans currently doing when it comes to their voter registration efforts, and what do you see the path ahead?
Look, the Florida Democrat Party is a failed organization. They're fleecing their donors. They're throwing money at a problem that they're not going to be able to solve until they focus on the root of the problem. Last cycle, they committed $2 million towards this effort, towards voter registration. And instead of increasing their voter registration, I think they want to do like 500,000 or something. They actually lost 130,000 registered voters. So they threw 2 million, lost 130,000. Now they're pledging 1 million. But on the Republican side, we've seen our registration actually go from, we were down 4.5 years ago. There were 250,000 more Democrats in Florida than Republicans. In November of 21, for the first time in our state's history, we had more Republicans than Democrats in our state. And today we're at 543,000 more Republicans than Democrats in Florida. That's been an almost 800,000 registration swing towards the Republicans. We're headed in the right direction. Now, the Democrats, $1 million is not going to solve their problem. Their problem is their radical agenda that they're trying to sell to Floridians, that Floridians aren't just rejecting, they are fleeing from. And you were seeing this mass exodus from the Democrat Party where people are registering sometimes as independents, and then eventually they become Republicans, or they're jumping right over to the Republican side, because this is not the Democrat Party of their grandparents, of JFK. They don't even recognize it. A lot of Democrats don't even recognize their party today with just how radical it has become. So until they address that, no money in the world is going to fix their registration problems.
I'm curious as to your take on Manny Diaz deciding not to come to South Florida to address the African-American community.
I can just go by what I saw in a couple tweets, and I think Senator Diaz, or Commissioner Diaz now, was pretty clear. We have the start of school today, so he's traveling around the state, trying to bounce into a couple of these districts and welcome kids back to school, which is an appropriate thing for the education commissioner to actually do.
Can you understand why folks in the Black community, though, may feel disrespected, not just by what Commissioner Diaz did, but by other actions that they've seen, including what we talked about at the very beginning, the removal of the only African-American female state attorney in the state of Florida? Can you understand why they may feel as if this administration is against them?
That's a narrative pushed by the media and by the left. she was removed, and yes, she was African-American female. She was replaced with an African-American male. I mean, no one's talking about the race on the back end of it because they're trying to generate a narrative that I don't think is an honest narrative. So I feel bad that he's not being recognized, but that's how the left works, is they want to generate a narrative. They're willing to selectively use race, mention it when it benefits them, they believe, in a political argument, and ignore it when it doesn't.
We'll be right back.